come to the final concluding session for the evening today. So we'll try to keep it short and we'll make it interesting. So we've had a great day today. There have been a multiple set of discussions and viewpoints on platformization. In the keynote session, Pari touched upon how we're truly in a platform era, platform economy, and platforms are becoming ever pervasive. Platforms are today touching upon multiple facets of our lives. However, when we talk about platforms, it's important to also keep into consideration that data privacy and data security are two very critical ingredients of a successful platform. In fact, when we talk to a lot of practitioners from the industry and we quiz them on what are the key challenges that a company today faces in their platform journey and in their bid to sustain platforms, then security, more often than not, is the number one challenge that comes to light. With that background, the objective of this panel today is to try and understand what are the key challenges that a company faces in their platform journey. And then we'll also try to look at what are some of the solution areas that a company can actually follow or leverage in a bid to build more successful and more secure platforms. So with that, I'll actually request my panel to start off with a brief set of introduction. So if you can just give a brief introduction on your current focus areas, and also if you can touch upon why you feel that data security and privacy today is a challenge for a platform company, I think that'll be good as well.
You said brief though? So my name is Vittorio Viarango. I run marketing for a cloud business unit at McAfee. Before I was with SkyHide, I was acquired by McAfee, and we were doing cloud security. So the founders of McAfee really saw this problem with data in the cloud and privacy very early on in 2011, 2012, and they built a company around it. Before that, I worked at VMware, Mobile Iron in product management and kind of engineering management kind of roles, but then I got too old to argue with opinionated engineers, so I moved to the marketing, and now I just choose colors for the website. And data, I mean, like, I'll give you an anecdote. There was one of our customers that had to go through a process where they had to evaluate the value of their assets, and this company has big hotels in Las Vegas and across the world. And at the end of the evaluation, they found that the data they had about their customers was more valuable than all their physical assets. And so now this data, as people transform their business to a digital businesses, that goes through moving to the cloud and cloud platform. And now your data is going to be out there. So your most valuable assets that you have today as a digital company is in the cloud, and that's why it's so important to protect it.
Sure, very interesting. Bala?
So, I don't know how to turn this on, so yeah, I'm behind on technology curve here. So, I am the head of technical operations and security at NerdWallet. So, I don't know how many of you are aware of the company, but the company is basically in the space of trying to solve a big consumer problem, which is folks don't know how to shop for personal finance. The amount of money people leave on the table because they don't shop for what is the best financial product for them. I'm talking about personal financial product, like if you want to go buy insurance, buy healthcare, and also things like credit card, where to open a bank account, what investment accounts to use. So that's what my company does. And my role there is to run all the production operations and technical operations. That includes, internal IT, external, our sites, and also I am the head of the security team. So one of the interesting things about my company is, just like most companies which are in the valley, which has been formed in the last, let's say, 3, 4 years or 5 years, we are 100% cloud native. And what that means is that we don't have a single piece of gear in the office other than a few routers which connect us to the internet backbone. All our corporate services, all of our production infrastructure is in AWS. So, and to kind of tie it back to the panel, our business is based on data. The way we are able to help our customers is because we have a lot of data and we are constantly amassing more and more. So I think when business, like driver key differentiator is data, it adds some really interesting complexities for us on how to make sure that we are following all the regulations and we are making sure that we are protecting users' data and making sure that we keep their privacy in mind all the time. So, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about me and the company.
Sure. Sajjad?
Oh, hi, my name is Sajjad Hussain. I work for Wipro Technologies and I lead a practice for cloud, data and AI. For me, when I saw the word platform, it struck a chord. I think as far as I can remember, I've been building platforms. And each time I look back, the definition of the platform has been continuously moving up. I'm that old, honestly. So we built applications on top of bare metal CPUs, writing assembly code. Then we built operating systems, and operating system became the new definition of a platform. And that went on for a while till the mid-90s when Java came along, .NET came along. Java and .NET were the new definitions of platforms. Applications were built on those platforms. They were called platforms then. Lo and behold, now we have online services from Amazon, Google, Facebook, you name any cloud company. That's the new definition of a platform. Applications are being built there. But I think it's gone further beyond that. I think, in my personal opinion, I think the new definition of a platform is data. It's abstracted at an even higher level. So you're really transacting with data. You're either transacting with data or you're analyzing data, and that's really where a lot of the action is. So in my mind, when I heard the word platforms, it was a sentimental journey all the way back, recalling the definition of platform that has been continuously moving. So how do you secure those things? How do you, whether it's deployed on-premise, whether it's deployed in the cloud, how do you secure them? How do you protect data? How do you protect, deliver on the promise of privacy? It's been a constant struggle dealing with these things. And I also remember not too long ago when NSA was seen in a more kindly light. We had to demonstrate to the NSA that a particular platform was actually secure and for processing government transactions. These are B1 systems. So there, it was not just the CPU. You had to demonstrate to them the CPU was secure. You had to demonstrate to them that the custom CPU board and the associated firmware logic that transacted with that CPU was secure. We had to prove everything was secure, the operating systems, the drivers, including the applications. So, yeah, so, if you're trying to secure something, as the definition of platform has continued to move up, the challenge is none of the old layers are going away. They're still there, but you're adding newer and newer layers, functions as a service, middleware, data as a service, and you're building applications on top of this whole stack. Now it behooves us to actually protect every layer out there in that whole stack. So that's the challenge.
Sure. Thanks, Sajjad. So in fact, we cannot talk about data security and not talk about security breaches, right? So we were talking before the panel on how the number of security breaches have grown year on year, both in terms of number and the quantum of breaches. And what's interesting is, when we look at the technology majors like Facebook, we look at the global fortune companies like Marriott, British Airways, all of them have suffered major data breaches and ended up exposing millions of user data to external entities. So I'm curious to understand what's your sense on why some of these major technology players and major global fortune companies are not able to provide a secure data platform to their customers because they have the deep pockets, they have n number of resources at their disposal. So what do you think are the reasons, Sajjad, these big giant companies are not able to provide secure data platforms?
Oh, it's not for a lack of trying, believe me. People are working really, really hard to protect their client assets and earn their clients' trust. When you go to any cloud company today, the first thing they talk about is earning the customer's trust. So it's a preeminent priority for most of them. But breaches happen because of a variety of reasons, operational reasons, technical reasons, social, cultural reasons. So innumerable reasons. I can just recall a really, really stupid mistake we made in our group. It's a test of VPC. We had some demo platforms to demonstrate some things to a client, and we had this VPC. Some junior engineer, he just left his keys in one of those S3 buckets. Lo and behold, some hackers managed to find their way into that S3 bucket, found that key, got into our VPC, destroyed everything we had out there half an hour before my demonstration to a particular client, right? And not just that, they launched thousands of VMs, maybe doing some Bitcoin mining, I don't know. So these things happen, right? And I think technology is evolving, and every layer in this stack that I just alluded to, there are processes, there's technology to secure, protect, authenticate, authorize. But I think fundamentally in my mind, really what are we protecting and what are we protecting against and from whom? So it comes down to your data. Action is where your data is. So if we can find a way to protect that data, secure that data, encrypt it potentially, and no matter how many layers you have on top or below, as long as every time you make access to that data, you have a means of decrypting it, processing it, and re-encrypting it maybe. That brings us to a lot of new interesting capabilities, right? Homomorphic encryption. Can you actually process on top of encrypted data itself? So yes, I'm meandering a little bit, but yes, if it's suffice to say, it's a hard challenge. We have breaches. People are trying really hard and learning from each other's mistakes. And the good news is a lot of this is published, right? Every time, sometimes people choose not to publish, but oftentimes when it becomes public, I think it behooves us to illustrate what really happened and demonstrate what actions you took to actually fix it. So a lot of those actions that people have taken to fixing these problems are out there on the internet. So you can read those steps that they took and learn from those steps and hopefully not make those mistakes. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Vittorio, what are your perspectives in this?
Well, I think there are not that many breaches after all. If you think about it, we went from a world where security was locking things into a building, and you either access the building or you don't access the building. And the moment the internet happened and you open your system to the world, good luck. You have new problems, right? So every time you have a new platform, it's job security for you guys who are helping customers fixing these problems. But I think that eventually the cloud is going to be the most secure platform for business that has ever been. And the reason why I think that is that I believe the average platform player in the cloud is much smarter and much more equipped to deal with security over time than your average on-prem customer. Right? Now, what the problem is, the moment there is a breach, because you have a lot of customer data out there, it makes the news. But if you think about it, and you think about the amount of data is out there, I think that this is a problem, but it's not as big as we think. I mean, it's a solvable problem, and eventually if you re-platform your security skills and your security tools for this new world where everything happens in the cloud, you're going to end up in a place where with encryption and these tools, you're going to be more secure than you were on-prem.
Right, very interesting. So Bala, let me ask you, so you come from a born in the digital niche, sort of a smaller company, right, NerdWallet, and before this you've also worked for Yahoo, for their platform security. So what's your take on the whole data security breaches aspect, and how are you able to do it today at NerdWallet vis-a-vis, when you were at Yahoo?
Right, so I think I'll just dovetail on what you were just saying, that after running operations in Yahoo where we had 50 plus co-locations, we ran our own infrastructure all the way bottom from the network pipes to all the way to the top of the stack on the server platforms, applications. Now if you were to ask me, I actually feel more secure being in a cloud native environment where we run everything in a public cloud. We run everything in AWS. So to dovetail to what you were saying, the problems which we had to spend a lot of time on, making sure that software is being patched, operating systems are being kept up to date. If there's an Intel vulnerability shows up, like the one we had 2 years back, where all the chips had a flaw, we don't have to deal with any of that because we have in some ways delegated that to a party whose just job is that. I mean, we cannot compete with them. It doesn't even make any sense. So that actually is one aspect where it's kind of counterintuitive. I actually feel cloud can be more secure. I think what it does is that it puts the onus on making sure security is done right at the level of business logic, application developers, people who are developing software. think it's moved up, right? And in the case of NerdWallet and also every other startup I know, we are in San Francisco, like all the startups in the stone's throw distance from where we are very similar to us. Data is our business. So like you were saying, data as a platform. The only way for us to differentiate is data. And things which cause a breach is we are trying to innovate. And innovation requires folks in the company to have data so they can make some decisions which can give us business advantage. So it's a constant battle. So I think it's the speed of innovation and data being the differentiator. I think that's just true there's a reason why more and more companies are collecting data, like we do that ourselves. I don't know how much I should talk about it, but every data piece we collect, it never goes away, right? I mean, we have nearline data sitting in OLTP databases, then it goes into S3 buckets, then it goes to Glacier. I mean, I can literally piece together what happened 5 years back. The reason we keep it is because that helps us drive our business. So I think it's an interesting world we live in where we have controls. So like one of the examples you were saying about somebody left your keys on the internet. By the way, this happens a lot. If you go on the internet and search on GitHub, and if you just do a query which has the pattern of a AWS key, they still keep finding so many of them, I mean in hundreds, right? In our case, what we have done is, now I'm kind of jumping into what we have done as solutions for this. All of our infrastructure itself is a code. So when we want to provision a new server or provision a new database, we don't have operators going and clicking on some AWS console. We have code which drives that infrastructure. Code can be code reviewed. Code can be changed. Code can be patched. So I think it's just a different set of controls, and it just needs evolution. I think talent, like making sure that we have folks who can actually play in this world, I think those are our biggest challenges. So in some ways, the onus on how to do security has changed. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
Right, true. Thanks. So while at one end we have all these security breaches which are maximizing, and for the reasons that we just sort of discussed, I think on the other hand we're also seeing a lot of regulatory forces which are coming into picture. So talking about HIPAA in case of US healthcare, or the recently announced GDPR norms in the European Union. So what do you think are the implications of some of these regulations? Do you think these are making the data platforms more secure? They're aiding data security and privacy? So what's your take on some of these regulatory forces?
To me, they're a great forcing function. They force companies to figure out if they had their act together to comply with these regulations. Sometimes regulation, you look at them and say, there's a bunch of people in a room detached from reality, but a lot of it is good, right? For example, the right to forgive to ask a cloud provider to forgive about your data, that's very important, right? And so the moment a company gets the requirement, do I even know where I have all the customer data? Then you need to figure out how to do it. And it's, I have a new platform, I need to figure it out. So I think they're just great forcing function that foster innovation and eventually a better environment for business.
Sure. Bala, what's your...
So I as a consumer, I'm thrilled to have these kind of regulations, but then as an operator, it freaks me out, and also make sure that I'll be employed for a long time. Like you were saying, I think if you look at, you're talking about GDPR, but in California, we just passed another act which is inspired by that, CCPA, right? California Consumer Protection Act. And in some ways, these people who are inspired to write these regulations are up the ante, and it's only getting more onerous. So an example of this is in CCPA, if you have a single incident where you lost somebody's data, they have dollar figures attached to how much you can be held accountable for. It's something like $750 per incident per consumer. Just think about it. We have 100 million users who come uniquely to our site in a year. If you ever got fined by that, we could probably close shop and go home, right? If you have privacy breach, it's even higher. I think it's like $7,000 per incident.
As I said, a forcing function.
It's a forcing function. So I think it's just too new for me to make a comment on how we're going to like fare in this new world.
Sure. So you make an interesting point. In fact, if we look at GDPR, there are several loopholes which are being often talked about, right? So there's this encryption clause which they're saying that if a company ends up exposing user data and if they had already encrypted the data, then they're not liable to be fined or penalized, right? So that's almost being seen as a get out of the jail free pass for a lot of these companies. So what do you think are, with the presence of such loopholes that companies are able to find in even regulations like GDPR, how secure would our platforms then be?
It's funny you should bring that up because just like this week, I was meeting with our general counsel and people are looking for loopholes even for the CCPA. So one of the arguments is every state cannot pass their own law, so we are trying to like delegate that to the federal authority. We already have a thing called GLBA, which is the regulation around privacy, which has been here for a long time. And we're trying to see if we can comply to that we can automatically comply to the CCPA. I think your question is how hard it's going to be. Is that what you're asking? Like, how do we like make sure that we can comply in terms of technical challenges? What is your real question?
So the question is that there are already loopholes which are being, and this is just one loophole, right? There are other such loopholes in, for example, GDPR. So if companies are able to leverage such loopholes and still not build secure platforms or ensure data security, then the entire, data security itself goes for a toss. So
Then there are bad companies.
Yeah.
Bad companies, they should be out of business. So to me, like, if there is a loophole, eventually the regulators are going to close it, right? And if you are a company that is looking for loopholes to not do the right thing for your customers, you're a bad company. You're bound at some point to do something bad and go out of business. So to me, it's like, just do the right thing. If you have data, if you're collecting data about customers, you need to protect that data as much as you can. You have to give rights to the users to be forgotten and anonymize the data when you use it, right? We just published a report that talks about how our customers use the cloud. So we have all information about organizations and exactly which type of services they're using, how much confidential data they have, and so on and so forth. That's a great information to have and to be able to share with the rest of the industry. We can drive a lot of interesting insight, but the first thing you need to do, and you just do it if you're a good company. But now, after you've been brainwashed with GDPR, you are damn sure that you're anonymizing that data, that is encrypted, put it on a thumb drive, give it to somebody, so it creates awareness, so you do the right thing.
Right, sure. So Sajjad, I think you've been pretty passionate about this whole topic around regulations and its implications, right? So let's hear from you. What are some of your thoughts on how regulations is impacting the whole platform
I think
economy?
we take the view that there's always going to be some regulation. There's always going to be some state, some country, sometimes motivated by data nationalism. This is what I call, because this is a means for some countries to say, hey, my data resides, my citizens' data resides in my country, and everything, the famous quote around data, data and gravity. I forget what that quote was. So there's gravity associated with data, which means applications, business, commerce, everything then starts to gravitate towards that data source. So that's really what's happening. So you're starting to see multiple cloud providers having to build local data centers, having to store data locally, transact business locally, and comply with local regulation. But if you step away from all of it, what does all this actually abstract to? And I think it is about protecting privacy, protecting confidentiality, encrypting data. And if you really abstract it at that level, I think you got to start thinking of compliance-oriented architectures. So regardless of whether it is CCPA, GDPR, or any other regulation that might come up from any other country, I think as long as you have safe, secure practices, you encrypt your customers' data, and you process and store and manage it the right way, and I think you're good. So that's really what we are advising our clients to guard against all of this regulation. You always have some new regulation popping up every other year, but if you take the fundamental view that you design your applications, your data assets with a compliance-oriented architecture, I think that certainly helps. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we've spoken about the key reasons or challenges that a company faces, with respect to data privacy and data security. I think it'll also be good to touch upon some of the solution areas or levers that a company can actually practice in order to build a successful and build a more secure platform. So Bala, why don't you go first? And what's the playbook for a successful and a secure platform company?
Right. So I think I already kind of alluded to this earlier, but if you look at, I'm talking about platforms like public cloud provider platforms, right? They provide a lot of constructs. If you look at AWS, there is, in the very first introduction, if you go to their website, it clearly has a diagram where they draw the line to say, this is what we will secure and what is your responsibility on top of that, right? So there is clear constructs they have built, and it's up to us to make sure that we are leveraging it. They have a way to do identity management so that we can do proper access control. They give us the service. It's up to us to make sure that we use it properly, right? Like you talked about breach where somebody left a key on an S3 bucket. S3 bucket has policies. If you look at, if you pick up, go to any site and just search for S3 bucket, exposed to the public, every day there are hundreds of these incidents happening. So for us, it's about leveraging the controls which are being provided, right? It requires two things. It requires us to have a mechanism which is, has fewer chances of making an error. So an example I gave was turning our infrastructure into code. So when you need to provision anything, it actually is written as a code instead of an operator going and issuing a command, right? So that eliminates a lot of the errors which may happen by delegating this to every single person in the company. But for that to happen, we also need the right knowledge. I think the place where we're really suffering is that we have folks we are trying to bring on who come from a different world, and we have to educate them so that they can now look at this from a different viewpoint, right? The problem sets are the same, and the principles are still the same, like you were saying, like encryption, making sure that there is privacy controls built into the application. They all remain the same. I think I look at this as just, it's an evolving new landscape. So basic things remain the same. It's a matter of making sure how we, learn and keep up with it, right? So I don't know if that helps.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, so I'm glad you touched upon the shared responsibility model. I know many of you are familiar with the shared responsibility model. But basically what that says is that, if I'm Amazon or if I am Microsoft with Office 365, I'm responsible for physical security, network security, up to the level, but they're not going to be in charge of making sure that your users, for example, don't do something stupid, right? If why do we use the cloud? To be more collaborative, right? So if a user takes a document with confidential information and shares it, they're not going to care about that. And so to me, the thing that you need to look at is, one, if you're adopting the cloud, it means that you're either saving money or you're making more money because you're going faster. You have to take some of the money and reinvest it in security. Two, you need to adopt a single sign-on technology that allows you to know the who's entitled to what, and then a platform, a cloud security platform that is designed to solve the cloud security problem, because you cannot put a big giant firewall in front of your cloud. It just doesn't work, right? That's how we've done security in the past. We lock the device down, we put a firewall in front of our systems, and life is good, right? Well, guess what? Most of the traffic now is cloud to cloud and unmanaged device to cloud. So you need to adopt an identity management system that tells you who has access, and then something like a CASB platform that we don't buy ours, but something that is, what I'm saying, I'm not trying to give you a pitch, but if you want to buy ours, of course, but buy something that is cloud native, that knows how to give you the visibility of where your data is, what it contains, and who does what to which piece of data, so that then you can provide the proper control. So for example, you can say, if a piece of document contains confidential data, it can be shared with these 4, 5, 10 domains, but it cannot be shared with these other domains. If somebody accesses confidential information from an unmanaged device, block it, and things like that. But first you need to know the who, and then get visibility to where your data is, what it contains, and then provide policies to protect it. That is cloud native, not all technology that is being regurgitated to solve a new problem.
Right, sure. Sajjad?
Yes, I think my colleagues here said what's needed to protect data on the cloud. I think we're also encountering special cases where Intel has this capability called SGX, which allows you to, and this is extreme scale security doing through extreme engineering. So within the Intel CPU, you can isolate areas of memory that are protected through hardware, where you can run your code linked with a Linux kernel library, and that runs as a self-standing binary within that enclave. And this allows you to protect and continue to deliver services, resilient services, even if the platform is compromised, even if the operating system is compromised, even if the cloud provider is compromised. And we are starting to see a demand for such extreme scale measures in many cases, because I think our customers are going to extreme lengths to protect their reputation and protect their customers' data. So I just thought I should lay it out there.